Gloria Romero, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
So first, I just want to start off with your background. What about your experience makes you qualified to be the next Lieutenant Governor of California?
Well, I believe that California needs somebody who understands who is the Lieutenant Governor and what can and should the Lieutenant Governor do. So first thing is the Lieutenant Governor is the President of the Senate. Okay. I used to be the majority leader of the California State Senate. I'm the only candidate who has actually served in the California State Senate. And this body is so important because this is where all of the nominations from the governor go to be heard and confirmed in order to assume the position of the cabinet, the department secretaries, all the boards and commissions, etc. So it's important to be able to know the senators, to work with them, to be able to position the nominees, to get their hearings going forward. It's very important. I would treat this position not just showing up in the Senate on ceremonial days, you know, all the backslapping, congratulations, these are the festivals, but really knowing key points in the legislative process when there are certain bills on the floor that need perhaps a little bit of push from the governor's office. I will be there as a very strong voice. So President of the Senate. Secondly,
wait, sorry, what if the governor is a Democrat?
You know what? Whoever the voters send, my responsibility is to respect the will of the voters. You know, of course, I am rooting for Steve Hilton, but should Javier Becerra win, my responsibility, once I'm elected, you park your politics and you govern. You're no longer campaigning, you're governing. So I would treat any governor who is elected with the same respect. I've known Javier for many, many years, in fact, and I've always gotten along quite well with him. You know, I'm happy for his success. It's just that I decided to walk away from the Democrat Party, whereas he stayed in the Democrat Party. So it's the same thing overall. You respect the will of the voters. It's like a vote of a jury. You may not agree with the verdict, but you accept the outcome, and it's the responsibility, I think, of any good public official to respect the will and to work with them to govern California. So one other thing, too, though, that the Lieutenant Governor does is, and this is especially important because we see the current governor flying around the country, flying around the world. A recent expose on the governor showed that he has been basically absent for about, 18 days in a very short period of time, campaigning, I think this past weekend in Michigan. When the governor is gone, it's the lieutenant governor who is the acting governor of the state of California. And I would not be a passive lieutenant governor. I wouldn't be one that would just say, I'm going to introduce a resolution today to make almonds the state nut of California. And I love almonds. And that's what Gavin Newsom did when he was
We love avocados.
Exactly. It was sort of like his Ferris Bueller's Day On. What he did was he ran resolutions on nuts and fruits and all these things. And I think I would look at it very seriously about what's happening in the state of California. We've seen a meltdown in the infrastructure of Los Angeles, for example. And so there was a need to, I believe, declare a special emergency. The fire that occurred in East Los Angeles just recently, no real addressing of it by local or state officials. And yet we believe there were serious calls there to have evacuated the people, to have declared an emergency, and to have taken a look at how the state and the locals can combine resources to assist low income, mostly Latino communities of East Los Angeles. Didn't happen. So had I been the acting governor on those days, I would step into action and to take the job seriously because I think it's a position that's overlooked tremendously. Additionally, and this is the biggest part, this is really what motivated me to run. Education's my passion. You know, my mother had a 6th grade level of education. I have a PhD, 2 postdoctoral fellowships. To me, education, it's what lifts one out of poverty. It's really is one that gives us aspiration to become the best selves that we can be. And California's budget, it's almost half the entire state budget on education. So the lieutenant governor serves as a regent for the University of California, a trustee for the California State University system, a governor for the Board of Governors of the community colleges, and voila, I'm a product of all three of those systems, not only as a student, but as a professor as well. And I'm professor emeritus at the California State University system today. So I know education thoroughly. And in fact, when I served in Sacramento, that's what people really knew me for, was really being a trailblazer on reforming and transforming schools, especially focused on why is California still pretty much at the bottom of the list nationally when it comes to student outcomes and success, even though California is one of the highest spenders on how much we invest in public education. So I would be a lieutenant governor that will show up, speak up, stand up on a variety of issues. And I'll give you just a couple. Number one, Title IX. I firmly believe that Title IX was intended to protect girls and women in sports and to give us access to opportunities and equity. So I will stand up for the rights of girls and women and our universities, UCLA, all of our schools, to respect Title IX. It's not fair for girls and women, and we want to see about that change. Number two, I would also, and I was very much just amazed after we saw what had occurred, in October 7th in Israel, in Gaza, and afterwards on the protests that broke out on our campuses, UCLA, for example. I lived only a few miles from UCLA. I walked across those very same quads and in those libraries where on my television set that spring of 2024, when I saw Jewish students having to barricade themselves because they were in fear of their life. And I thought, my God, this is the University of California. There's supposed to be non-discrimination here. No student should ever have to go to college in fear for their very life because of international politics. And so I would stand up, and I did immediately, calling out the governor, the current lieutenant governor, the chancellors. Anti-Semitism, we cannot allow it in our universities. And people ask me, why am I so passionate about anti-Semitism, the fight against it? It's because, number one, I've been to Israel 2 times. I made a personal pilgrimage to Auschwitz, and I believe that anybody who gets a chance should go to Auschwitz, because I think you really understand what never forget means. And it starts at home. And home to me has been East Los Angeles. And the interesting thing for me in East LA, and people don't know this about the history of East LA, it's that once upon a time when Jews were fleeing Europe because of the rise of Nazism and everything that was happening, located, of course, in the United States, New York, came across west. Guess where many stayed and lived in Los Angeles? It was East Los Angeles. And that was because at that time, there were racially restricted covenants in California. And so the Jews landing in Los Angeles could not buy homes, let's say on the west side of Los Angeles. The east side was pretty much the grounds where people would say, okay, foreigners, et cetera, can live here. So Jews began to make their home in East Los Angeles. Today we have the boulevard. It'll probably be changed pretty soon, but it's Cesar Chavez, Avenue. Mm-hmm. It'll probably be changed eventually. But what was it before? It was Brooklyn. It was Brooklyn Avenue, and that was a homage to the Jewish community from New York. The original delicatessens, if you go to the cemeteries, and you learn so much about the history of people and the struggles of people by just walking through a cemetery. You go through East Los Angeles, and you'll find the graves of Jewish individuals who were buried there before. So I was always very cognizant that, unlike that line that, east is east and west is west and never the twain shall meet, I always believed there needed to be a line between East Los Angeles and today's West LA, where a great number of Jewish Americans do reside in Los Angeles, to have commonality. faith and family, freedom, food as well, I think is very common to both the Jewish and the Latino communities. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, that for the grace of God, it could be any one of us. So those are important issues that you can speak up as a lieutenant governor, and I have that expertise, I have that knowledge, and I would oversee the compacts to fight anti-Semitism that were negotiated between the federal government and the representatives of a number of our universities in California. And just recently, we've heard about more concerns at San Jose State University on anti-Semitism. So these are a couple of things. One of the big ones, though, that I find that I would especially be very strong on is the fight to restore the SAT or some measure of objective data to admit students into the University of California system. We have been blind to the numbers. I have championed this issue of looking at the very stark education gap in California. We find that close to 80% of African American kids in California are not doing math at the basic levels of proficiency. It's close to 70% who are not reading at basic levels. Same thing for Latino students as well, very similar. And my feeling has always been, you can't just paper it up and then shuffle kids through, because we saw just a few months ago when they knock at the door of the University of California, and if they are admitted, once again, as we saw, the University of California, San Diego faculty are the ones who stood up and said, hey, Houston, we have a problem here. Kids are coming in, the professors are having to dumb down the curriculum, and we're having to teach middle school and elementary level math in college. It doesn't work. It's not good for the student. It's not good for the professor. It's not good for the taxpayers of the state of California who are paying for this. So these are things that I would lead on. I believe in meritocracy. I believe in strong standards. We have a problem in education, and it's almost half the state budget. So as lieutenant governor, I would want to create a TK through 16 pipeline to really emphasize you've got to teach kids to read by age 9, by 3rd grade, because we are then, we are learning to read, and then after that, you're reading to learn. And what's happening in the system, it just shuffles along, institute merit pay. So as lieutenant governor on these boards, it's a major bully pulpit. I am nationally recognized for the work that I've done on education reform, transformation, school choice, so I would carry that. But there's more to lieutenant governor.
Yes, and let me just to prioritize what exactly you would try to do day one, what would that be?
Well, day one, I would, so day one immediately, I'm going to sit down with all 40 senators. I would meet with all 40, bipartisan, that is pretty much my reputation. I'll meet across the aisle, work with people overall, and to indicate, again, these are the nominations. How do we move forward? Let's start setting the agenda. Let's get the confirmations going. Number 2, should Steve Hilton...
But if the state Senate retains the numbers that it has right now, which, I mean, the state Senate doesn't need a Republican vote to pass anything. I mean, how would you do that? I mean, do you really think that all of them would want to meet with you?
Yes, I do, because I think I have a very strong reputation. I had so many Democrat Democrat former senators who have reached out to me and have said, congratulations. So I don't believe that it's hostility. And my view is very much, because I really do believe California, it's not a blue state and it's not a red state, it's the golden state. And I think that it's time that we stand up and work for the benefit of the people. One thing that's very important is that you to have the collegial relationships. It doesn't mean that you succumb to the will. It doesn't mean that you give in. But I believe you always have to have respectful discourse. And that is what I'm known for. So I will sit down. I will work with everybody. I will find out and pull out the numbers where every senator, this is the condition of reading and writing and math proficiency in your district. Let's work together. What do we have to do? What can we do in order to get this done? I can pull out college graduation rates as well in their district. Are you satisfied with these? Let's work together on this. But the most important thing is, I think, to establishing that priority on day one. And so that would be my priority from day one, to start setting the agenda. You have to reset, I think, the culture of basically the demonization of people. Because I tell people, look, I'm the same person. I'm Gloria from the block, Jenny from the block. It's still me. The party left me. It went extreme left, far woke. But I know many of these Democrat legislators, and I'm not going to demonize them. I disagree with many, but I think there are many who feel trapped within a one-party monopoly rule. Remember, when I served in the legislature, when I initially was elected, it was all Democrat. Governor, Senate, Assembly. Then there was a recall, and we had a Republican governor. It was still Democrat majority legislature, but that very act of basically breaking one-party monopoly rule, it opened up an opportunity to have conversations. I worked directly and I was a Democrat. I was in leadership back then, and I worked directly with a Republican governor to bring about some of the most important education, parent rights legislation that we were able to put on the books. So I think it's the demeanor, it's the temperament, it's the respect for people, showing that respect and working. The other thing that we would look at as well, day one, is working with folks to get convened. The governor would have to call it, and should it be Steve Hilton, this is something that I would urge right away, calling an extraordinary session of the legislature. Because you had mentioned legislation, but in reality, the only thing that a legislature really has to do is pass a budget, pass a balanced budget, pass a budget on time. I have gone up and down the state of California. I don't hear anybody clamoring for new bills and new laws. Thousands get sent each year to the governor's desk. And you have to stop and think, well, what are they? Most people can't even name one bill that was signed into law. But what we need is reality in the budget, getting rid of the fraud, the abuse that's there.
This would be the special session that you call for to address abuse.
Exactly.
And fraud.
Exactly. And that's where the lieutenant governor can take a very strong lead. To a large extent, you could sort of channel J.D. Vance. In a way, when people say, what's the lieutenant governor? We never heard of it. It's sort of the heartbeat away from being the governor. We have to be elected separately in California. But you may see as well, J.D. Vance was assigned to oversee a particular commission looking at waste and fraud and abuse in California. And already there's been so much that's uncovered. I would want to do something like that to really work with our legislators in the budget deliberation process to identify these are areas where we can do better, we should do better, and how do we claw back those funds. So there's so much. And I haven't even gotten to all the Coastal Commission, the Land Commission,
right,
all of that. But these are some things that we can do. And at the end of the day, honestly, Ashley, it's the bully pulpit to a large extent. I don't run a department. I'm not going to command a large staff. I may have a very small staff that's there, but I believe that it's not the job that defines the person. It's the person who brings about a stature and a respect for the job. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to put a spotlight on the lieutenant governor. This is what I can do. These are the credentials that I hold. This is the passion that I have for California. And for really investing in education, because education, it's the backbone of an economy. And by the way, the lieutenant governor, I'll be writing the economic plan, leading international delegations. An area that I'm focused on is getting to the bottom of human sex trafficking in California. Los Angeles is the epicenter of sex trafficking. I don't live too far from it. And I want to lead that, and I can lead that, because that's essentially, we want trade in California, but we don't want human cargo. We do not want to be trading in the bodies of young girls and women on the streets of Los Angeles. So speak up, show up, stand up. It's a powerful message, and you get the right person in there, you will see change.
So for voters who are watching this, what would you say is the biggest difference between you and Fiona Ma?
Well, I think number one, I believe that I am well suited to be the lieutenant governor of the state of California.
I mean, she's been state treasurer. She also has a lot of experience working in the legislature.
she's been state treasurer, but if you've noticed, she does not identify herself as the treasurer in her ballot designation. She's running away from her own record. And you have to ask the question, who raided the Treasury? Why didn't she stand up when we saw the bullet train to nowhere? All of these contracts going out, to unemployment being sent to the inmates. I know there have been some controversies where during COVID there were non-competitive bid contracts that were issued. Where was she as the treasurer, having to get them back? I would have wished that if you are a certified public accountant, that you would want to stand up to say, I vouch for this budget. And we've seen even in the latest passage of the budget, we know that's been pieced together. It's not a real budget. There's a lot of bloat in there that should be done. So I look at it and I think, if you're the treasurer, then you rated this budget. And why don't you stand by your name? Why don't you put California State Treasurer there? So I think that's a major issue. Other issues as well too. I mean, the state of California had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to settle a sexual harassment case that was brought against her. That's a serious issue. And I think it's one, we saw the removal of Eric Swalwell. And again too, I mean, he was charged with sexual abuse, but sexual harassment, at what point then do we say, if it's, that old adage, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Well, if it's bad for the gander, isn't it bad for the goose as well? And we cannot just gloss that over, because that was a big settlement from the people of California. I think as well too, I'm a much more independent person. I think I've worked across the aisles much more so in terms of running our schools and looking at oversight of education, which really is the biggest issue, I believe, for the lieutenant governor in that position. I'm the only one who has that education experience and credentials. I think Fiona's a nice person. I just don't think that the lieutenant governor should never be a slot for a career politician to just fail up. And that's what we have found in California. People just rotate. They kind of change spots. The current lieutenant governor is endorsing the current treasurer, and the current treasurer is saying, okay, I will endorse you. And that's how we get into this cycle of having leadership in Sacramento that looks out for them, and we end up with career politicians, but we don't end up with change. And I think it's important to have people who are ready to run, who understand the rules of Sacramento, understand the needs that are here, but are out, can come back, and not be clouded by the bubble of Sacramento, and bring in the fresh experience, private sector experience in business as well, and not being simply a creature of the public dough for all of these years. We shouldn't just elect people who go from one office to another. That's a fundamental difference. And I think Californians are ready for change. And I think Californians see it. And Californians appreciate that there are not only outsiders, but disruptors in the system, so that we can stop and say, it can't just be about moving up a political ladder. It's got to be, what have you done? And if you have been the treasurer, why is the Treasury in the state that it's in? That's a big question.
Gloria Romero, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So much more, but thank you so much for the time you've given me.
Thanks.